Welcome. My name is Nate, and today we're going to go over how to make architectural massing diagrams. This is really for early on in the design process when you want to really communicate the basic approaches that you're looking at, and typically you're going to think of maybe 2 or 3 schemes. So we're going to be doing this all within Rhino and using customized textures to really streamline the process for these visualizations. This is really helpful to keep it in Rhino because then later you can start to add more detail and you're not having to spend a lot of time in Illustrator or even Photoshop in order to produce these massing diagrams. Here's another example, probably closer to what we'll be doing, which is even more basic. So you can kind of see these levels of initial ideas. Maybe this would be the first one early on, and then later on you can start to add in little bits of detail. First off, just to show you my process here, before we get into just making the overall masses, if I select a face, you'll notice that I have a custom material and that most of these are just basically just volumes within Rhino, and then I'm going File, Print, and I'm not using any type of rendering software to get these. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create 2 masses. So I can come in here and I did the box tool, but you could also come in and create a rectangle, select that rectangle, and then extrude it up. You'll notice if I go into shaded view that this version is open, and you can always come in here and type in cap, and then you have a capped object, but we'll just keep that open for right now. I have our 2 volumes, and let's just say I wanted to make some kind of lookout tower type of thing. So I'm gonna come in here and thinking of having a cantilevered piece here. I just realized too, I don't really know what the scale of this is at the moment, and right away you can get closer to a realistic size. So I can come in here and type in scale 1D and then just make this, let's make this like a 2-story thing. So let's do 30 feet, and then let's just make this 15 feet. And then this is just going to be off of our main volume here. And then we can just make this, I don't know, we can make this 20 feet and have this, well, let's make it 30 feet. So I'm just hitting scale 1D, and then I'm going to type in 30 feet. And then let's just make it 30 feet. In that direction, and I am going to go in and go ahead, might as well just cap this. All right, so we have some idea that we're going to have this volume that's going to kind of come out of here, and you can always hit Control Shift and sort of move these items around. And so I'm going to kind of do some kind of like wedge type of thing, and then you can just be really playful at this point and see what works and what doesn't work. You can always come and select the different volumes and move these shapes around, or you can kind of make that taller if you need to. Make this just like a little bit taller. Yeah, so by doing Control Shift you can really have a lot of fun with it. You could also do Control Shift and extrude as well. And what that does, you'll notice in wireframe, let's go to wireframe, or even in rendered view, it will show it. You'll notice that now there's 2 volumes, and I can actually select these faces, which might come in handy when we want to have different materials assigned. Okay, and we're going to also do a contour because I want to actually have some floors in here, might as well. So let's do contour, and you want to just do the regular contour, and we're going to go from the top to the bottom here, and let's just do 15 feet. And then I'm going to just extrude this about 3 feet downwards there, just to go 2 feet up. There we go. Okay, so I might also have an idea of that. Okay, maybe this front portion would be transparent. This volume would be transparent. And then maybe the back of there wouldn't be transparent. And then let's say we wanted some kind of like horizontal thing coming across. I always like to jump into the plan view and top view. It also gives you a sense of proportion as well, so you can start to refine what these specific relationships are. But because this is a demo, we're just going to go through this pretty quickly. All right, let's cap this. What's cool too is you can select the top and you can actually scale this, and then you can get an overall tower sort of, you can get a taper really quickly just by going select shift. And let's say we didn't want to do it on every side. We just wanted to do it on a couple here, on two, then I'm just going here and I'm only moving this scale button here and do stuff like that. So you'll get more and more comfortable the more you sort of play around with this. All right, so we have a tower here, and let's get some mock streets going. Here should be something like that. Okay, so let's start assigning materials and take a look at how we can do that. I'm first going to do a very simple assigning materials and then get into some of the more advanced or more specific. It's not necessarily advanced, I mean, it's easy to do, but it's just more specific things that we can do. So just right off the bat, you can come in here and you select the whole object itself, and you'll notice that there are two bars here. You want to make sure that you hit this material. If you go to here, you're going to the global materials, and then you're not setting it for the object that you are selecting. So you want to make sure that you have this object selected, then you're pressing this button and you're coming down and hitting this, then press use a new material. We're going to do custom, and we're going to call this, let's just call it public. Why not? Okay, and then we need to come in here and we need more space. So we're gonna come up here and let's give this just like a light. It could be an orange, it could be a blue. Let's do orange, might as well just do an orange. Okay, and then let's go to rendered view, and you'll notice you just have this orange cube. Let's make it a little bit more orangey, and you can always make it a little bit transparent as well. Now you'll notice that I have outlines around my volumes. You do have to go to File, Properties, and if you go down to View, Display Modes, Rendered, Objects, Surfaces, you'll notice this edge thickness, and you want to make sure that's at 1. You'll notice if I go to 0 here, then there'll be no edges, which if that's what you're going for, that's fine. But it's nice to have that line work embedded in the rendered view. So you can go to 1 there. So we get some of those. So that would be a really quick way. You don't get much texture, and let's see if we can get with the blue. Maybe that would maybe look a little bit better, just like a light blue. And then we think of like this as, let's use a new material, custom. And I want to use custom. I never want to use glazing, because for glazing, it doesn't give you as many custom options here. So just to keep that in mind. So I think that would be a completely legitimate thing to try out. I also want to just quickly come in here and do Boolean difference. I just said Boolean to objects. I'm going to do Boolean difference, and then it's going to say object to subtract from, object to subtract with. And now I have a little chunk here. So I actually Booleaned out of this. We're going to cap this. Okay, So I'm actually just going to get rid of the floor because we're doing it just a little bit more primary. And then we would think of this as also more of a transparent bar. And that's totally fine. But then the next level here is to add some textures to the materials themselves. And so to do that, we can come and use this textures panel here. And I really like to use this colored textures, and we're going to add any kind of like watercolor or textured thing would be fine. And you notice it's coming through pretty very clearly. So you want to make sure that this isn't too intense. It's just to add some depth and some shadow to this. And we're going to select this material, and we're going to maybe give it another type of grunge texture there. And then again, we can make this maybe a little bit softer. And now we have a little bit of more of a texture diagram instead of needing to add that into Photoshop. The next thing that we can do is we can start to apply transparencies to this. So for instance, I have a transparency. I tend to look for stuff that is black and white. So for instance, I could use this grid for transparency, and you'll notice that it's starting to apply this grid to it, and that could maybe start to imply mullions. And then I would come in here and maybe just reduce that size, reduce that intensity so it's not as obvious, but it could start to inform what could be eventually mullions. And you're just doing this with just really just applying a texture. Now, if we want to change the orientation or how that transparency is coming through, I can click this transparency button, and I can both change the scale of it. So let's change the scale to like 25, and we can rotate it too. So because it's a grid, it doesn't matter. And now I can't even see it. So let's select this again. I select the object itself, then come to the actual material. And we're going to change this to like 50 now. Let's see how that shows up. Maybe it needs to be even like 100. So now you can see it, and it's also scaled differently as well. It's actually scaled way, way, way too much. So let's come back in here and let's just do like 10. Something like that. You could attach panels. Like let's say you were thinking of doing like a perforated panel. You know, you could attach that as a transparency. So let's try that out. Let's actually first try to do just a vertical hatch. Okay, so here I downloaded just basically just vertical stripes. And you can see that could imply floor levels, that could imply mullions. But you'll notice that it's not mapping it correctly to each particular face. And so what you have to do in this circumstance is, if you want this to map correctly, like let's say we all wanted it, I don't know, vertical, for instance. So in order to do that, what I would have to do is come in here, hit the rotation, and we're not going to rotate it now. It's just going to be a vertical. And we'll notice that, okay, it recognized it on this topic and on this object. Notice it's a little bit fat, so I'm going to come in here and actually, let's do like a 25 or 35. There we go. Make this a little bit. It's so stripy that that pattern's coming across a little bit too strongly. Let's do 25. Okay, so we have that pattern. Now we're looking at these faces and they're not correct. So what you have to do for this, you have to do Control Shift and select the face itself. Now, I can't just rotate it and hope that it's going to be better. Unfortunately, I have to create a unique editable copy. So you have to copy the material. Now I can select this. Now I'm in a new material called Public 1. I would probably want to rename it so I really know it's a different one. And I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And you'll notice that that rotates now. And then I can go around and select my faces that I want to change and change it to the one. I don't really want the top and the bottom to also have this stripy pattern that we've decided. So I'm going to come in here and we'll just we could give it that solid panel because that will probably most likely be solid. This area down here more transparent. There's a couple ways you could kind of go about this, thinking about going about this. The quickest I can think of just off the top of my head is just doing a Control-Shift-Select and move this face up. And then come in here and I'm going to extract the surface. Make sure that copy's on. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to extrude it. And what you can do is I can select this bottom surface with Control-Shift-Select, Control-Shift-Select, and I can hold click and I can drag it down to a specific point. Now this is a separate volume and I can set it to that blue color that we have there. And then we have some idea of massing. And then let's say, oh, well, the back is probably not going to be this transparent mass. It's maybe just going to be the front. Maybe what we do is we say that it's more transparent here, and then it's going to be less transparent over here. Okay. Now what I would do is, there's so many ways to do this, but sometimes just drawing the curve, curve, and then we're just going to extrude this up. Okay, so that's capped. Then I can do Control-Shift and then select, hold, and then just drag that up there. And let's give this the same material as the other object. So I'm going to select this, come down here, and then go to the custom here as well. All right, so this is our initial massing here, and let's take some screenshots and see how we did. You could also at this point bring in some people for scale. That might help sort of give an understanding of how tall these spaces are. So might as well do that. So we can. It's probably a little too transparent, so let's do something like that. All right, then we want to make sure that the entire building is in there. And then we're going to come into named view and we're going to find a view that we like. Let's try set perspective to 2-point perspective. Find an angle that we like. Could be something just head on. Could even be an axon. You can go file, set view to axon if you want. But for this, we're just going to keep the 2-point perspective, kind of come along the street view. And then just make sure that we're not getting too much of the street, more of the sky. And then come in and we're going to save this view. Now let's go to print. And let's print this. And with those 3 layers, we're going to be able to make a pretty nice drawing, I think. So now we can go to here and let's do technical view, file, print, and we're going to keep it on raster. You can export it as a vector, but then you get all these lines in the back to this sun here, and we're going to turn on manual control, and then you can drag this down. And then what we're looking for is, let's turn off the skylight so that the shadows are really dramatic. What we're looking for is getting a dark side and a light side. So we're going to say this side we want to be dark and then this side we want to be light. It's there. We're just going to do something similar again. So I'm going to go File, Open, and then open up all these recent versions. File, Open. Now again, you could adjust those rendering settings right into Rhino to the point where you get it where you like it and you don't have to do this Photoshop work afterwards. I really like Photoshop, and so I'm just inclined to kind of have these multiple outputs and start to add things. I mean, you could add colors and textures, and you could really build on this model a lot. And here I'm just doing a file print, and then I'm going like exported. So I'm going to start just with this base rendering, and I can come down here and go solid color, and I'm just going to give this a solid white color background. You really want to do everything in layers when it comes to Photoshop. You don't want to be changing the image itself. You always want to be applying layers, so you can always go back and adjust that. Then just layer on this work, and definitely want to go into multiply as the blending mode, and then just turn this down a lot. And I didn't hit multiply on the correct one. I didn't want to multiply this. I wanted to come in here, hit multiply, and reduce this down quite a bit. I can come in here and also, depending on how long you want to take on it, you could just call it good here. But if you want to add some depth and add a little, make it a little bit nicer, you can duplicate this base layer and then just do a multiply. You could duplicate this base layer and do a filter. So filter gallery. And I always like to do just like a texturizer to give more of a paper quality to it. And then just turn this down. And you'll notice that since I have those white plops, it's coming out. So I can also apply, I can duplicate this layer too, and then come up to filter gallery. I have to rasterize it. I could also turn it to a smart filter. That would be fine as well. And I can just give this a nice, just like a base texture. So we're not even, at this point, we're not even uploading, grunges really. We're just using Photoshop to give that slight texture, maybe some environmental fog. You could also duplicate this and do a blur layer as well. That can be really nice. And then we're going to come in and add our shadows. And a lot of times too, I'll just scroll through this and something weird pops up every now and then, like something like this. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I could kind of work with that. So it's not a prescriptive method, but it's a way to start, and then you can kind of adjust to your liking how you want this. All right, I'm noticing I don't really like the ground, but I'm really paying attention to the shadows is there as well. The shadow layer didn't work out as well, so I can always come here and hit this masking layer, and then just come back and sort of lighten things up because that was getting a little bit too dark. Another thing that you could do is, let's just turn this off. You could just make a new layer, and I could come in with a brown brush, and you could just make your own shadows. I mean, let's do this a little bit quicker. So just imagine if the sun was coming down. So it's another option, just if you don't want to do that shadow layer, and then you would come in here and literally just do it really softly, but maybe come back with another layer and do more of a sharp shadow coming across there. That's really the shadow that I wanted, but it wasn't coming through quite as much as I wanted it to. I probably actually want these blue things to sort of glow a little bit. So I'm actually going to turn this layer off. We'll just have a sharper shadow layer. So sharper shadow layer. And in this case, I'm using the opacity to where I can't really tell my bad Photoshop brushing skills. But you can see in here, like I need to just touch that up, something like that. So you don't even, it can be subtle. You don't need to, 15, let's even do like a 10. You notice, like with it on, with it off, it actually does kind of make a difference. Then I can also come in here and let's say we want to do some light layers with just like, I don't know, a hint of yellow, maybe not. Let's first just try white. And what you can do for this is I can kind of come in here and just do like 2 kind of overall sparks, I'm going to call them. I'm going to hide that. Then I'm going to come in here and do a new layer and do kind of a more condensed, what I'm going to call like a condensed spark. So there's some semblance of maybe, you know, that there's some lighting above, you know. And so maybe there would be some kind of like lighting core in there as well. And then you could do the same here. Like, just imagine if you had like some track lights coming through here, you know, they would be slightly lighter. And then you can kind of come back and then just, again, it's like just a little bit to where you can't really tell. Bring this back and then reduce it just a little bit. So again, it can be subtle, but it can make a big difference. You could come back too and make it slightly light yellow as well. So if you wanted to give the impression that this is a little bit warmer down here, you could also do something like that as well. So these are just touch-ups, you know. Sometimes you can get a little carried away with it like we are right now. And sometimes it doesn't enhance it, and you kind of have to just assess, like, this yellow is looking terrible, so let's not do that. And then let's just delete it and call it quits, or not even do a light layer and say, actually, I like it better without it. So you just want to make sure it's not too obvious. And then, yeah, it can look pretty good. You could come in here too, and let's say you have a Photoshop layer of some glazing. You could Photoshop something in here. You could even use this as a design tool right now. You could start to design that facade. You could print this out and start sketching on it and generating some ideas that way. All right, let's see if we want to do anything else to this layer. I think this is probably good enough for now. And then you just go File, and I really like to go Save As. No, I don't like to do Save As. You can go File. Well, obviously save the file, but to export it, you can do Save for Web, and that just produces a high quality image, but one that's not just overbearingly too small. Overbearingly too big, sorry. All right, and then we just save this out. All right, so that's just to give you an idea of really customizing the materials within Rhino so that you can do less work afterwards. And then if you like, kind of bring it into Photoshop and doing some additional layers. The purpose of this is to really just start generating ideas and get an overall idea of the form and the organization of how you're thinking about your architecture, and not getting bogged down with the details of modeling or trying to figure something out that you can't yet. First, you just need to get a larger picture of what's going on, and then you can go back and start adding the layers and the details. So we could go back and start adding levels, maybe some stairs, maybe subdividing some rooms, maybe doing some studies on different facades, start to fix those proportions, all that kind of stuff. But this is a really nice starting spot, and really encouraging you to explore the design freely and not with a lot of inhibitions in terms of what you can do. Well, I hope you like this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos on how to be a better architecture student or a better architectural designer. Okay, so stay tuned and have a good day.